Good evening, everybody. I got a little distracted. I'm afraid. We had one little part that did not decide to work right away. So, if you just stand by for 2 seconds, we'll make sure that the Instagram feed is up and running, and then we'll do all of the introduction stuff. If you tuned in for our open mic on not this last Thursday, but the Thursday before, then this should be all perfectly normal for you, because it was a lot of fun. We're doing it again this Thursday, but it was also a little bit of a goat show, maybe just a bit, probably a little bit. Looks like Instagram's not going to work tonight. Oh well, you're going to have to join in on the normal places. Let's get right down to it. Welcome everybody to another live episode of The Breakdown. It is June 14th, 2026. This show could have, in putting this show together, I just want to say right out of the gates, this could have been like a 6-hour for the amount of stuff that we had to leave on the cutting room floor. So, just in advance to let everybody know, if you want to hear anything about the Boundaries Commission, because there was some fun stuff that happened there this last week. If you want to hear about Danielle Smith's new The Cost of Separatism, organized and chaired by alleged separatist academics, or maybe there's a greater conversation to be had about a couple other things. We're going to be hitting on those topics on Thursday for our open mic. And that's how I'm going to fill the time when the chat is quiet or the Twitter Spaces has nobody on it who wants to raise their hand and give me what for. So there's all of that. Let's get into tonight's show, because we're going to start with not so much a correction as it is a little bit of a clarification, because we do that here. We're all in the interest of making sure that we're trying to do the best version of whatever it is that we're doing here that we possibly can. So to get right into it, this is from the DMs post that we put up a few days back. We received a DM. Very concerning. On Friday night last week, a person in Edmonton was bleeding out quite badly, and when bystanders called 911 to get help, they waited 20 minutes for an ambulance. Also, the bystanders tried calling the fire station right down the street, but they were told they couldn't come unless they were officially dispatched. That's not great. None of that is great. Let's be very, very clear about that. And I have a lot of questions. I have not very many answers, but we did receive another DM, a follow-up DM from somebody who was involved with the situation, and they were concerned that this was in some way dunking on the firefighters who received the phone call saying that, hey, there's this guy, he's bleeding a bunch. Could you maybe come and help? To be very, very clear, not the intention whatsoever. It goes to the system. It goes to the problems within the system. I don't know why. I have no inside information whatsoever other than what we received in this DM. So I don't know why the firefighters were not dispatched. I cannot speak to that. But it's not the firefighters' fault that they weren't dispatched. And it is important that there is a pathway for people to be dispatched for, because otherwise nobody knows what's going on, and things can get really, really silly. If somebody just shows up at an EMS or a fire hall, then generally speaking, a call can be created there, a still alarm, if you will, can be created there. But if it's out in the wild, you can't just have firefighters running around or first responders of any stripe running around trying to navigate their way through unknown situations when they haven't been dispatched. So this is not in any way a dunk on the first responders, to be clear. Obviously, for regular watchers of the show, I have a little bit of a bias on that one, but that was never, ever, ever the intent. And I personally committed to the person who was like, hey, this is not the firefighter's fault, that we would come on and do this clarification today. So there it is. There's the editorial responsibilities discharged. Moving on from there. Let's get into the week in politics, because it has been really quite remarkable. And the next question you have to ask. You have to be curious about a little bit. As a thought experiment, let's throw this out to the ether. How bad, given the UCP's track record, whether we're talking about the Turkish Tylenot, whether we're talking about the rail, Grand Central Station stuffs, the train to Banff, whose business case was already disproven by the UCP version 1.0, not 2.0 under Smith. The closing of supervised consumption sites, all of the ADAP stuff. There's a long list of things that the UCP has not recognized as bad. But for some reason, there are apparently some things that are recognized as bad. But you have to ask yourself, how bad does something have to be in order for even the UCP, even Danielle Smith, to go, whoa, that's not, wow, we can't do that. Turns out we got the answer to the question this week. It's exactly this bad. For anybody who's unfamiliar, the EMS rebranding that was announced on May 15th to, I don't know what the opposite of fanfare is. Disdain, perhaps, would be the word. And I need to be very clear as we're doing this segment here. I'm speaking only for myself and absolutely not speaking for any organizations that I may or may not be affiliated with. But the rebranding, it did not land. And there's probably a bunch of different reasons for that. Some people were like, the trucks, they're not bad. The uniforms, a lot of people were like, oh, good God, what is that all about? There were some people who made the argument that, hey, if you can't spell paramedic with only one I, then that's not great. Because the launch video that the then Alta Paramedic Health launched with had AI generated clips of ambulances and airplanes with ridiculously slow propeller speeds that were all AI generated. And apparently nobody decided to proofread the stuff because that is a legitimate still from that video with the extra I in paramedic. So that's super fun. And the condemnation came out from a lot of different corners right out of the gates. HSAA, the Health Sciences Association of Alberta, came out and were like, really? This is the priority? But they weren't the only ones. The First Responders Association, Alberta First Responders Association, issued, I think, a 2-3 page letter where they said, this is the priority, really? Friends of Medicare also weighed in on the conversation, saying new logos, decals, and uniforms are the wrong priority for emergency care. And all of that culminated, if you will, in Adriana Lagrange's announcement on July 10th. I've heard questions from Albertans and frontline workers about the recent emergency health services rebranding, and I share their concerns. On Monday, I directed EHS Alberta to immediately halt the rebranding and return to the previous name and logo until further engagement can take place with Albertans and contracted providers. This needs to be done at the right time and with the right input. I want to assure Albertans that no operational funding was spent by EHS Alberta on this project. Pregnant pause. No additional changes have been made to uniforms, ambulances, or other assets since the launch. I look forward to EHS Alberta sharing more details about future engagement as they become available. So, to make the short story maybe a little bit longer, Adriana Lagrange claims that there were absolutely no operational funds that were put towards this. Cool. We're in the trust but verify business here at The Breakdown, and so we're still trying to come up with a good way to say ATIA, or Access to Information Act. It used to be the FOIP, Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. Everybody called them FOIP because it was the FOIP, Freedom of Information Program. It's not really a great way to say ATIA, maybe. We're filed an ATIA. We filed a couple. So we're gonna do the trust but verifying on Lagrange's claims that no operational funding was put forward. But then things took a bizarre turn legitimately bizarre turn yesterday with Danielle Smith's Your Province, Your Premier.
I talked to the minister when she came in. So we've moved Minister Adriana LaGrange over to hospital and surgical services. And I'd heard enough feedback from the paramedics. I just sent her a note and I said, I think this rebranding is a dud. Do you think we can revisit that? And she looked at it herself and said, yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. So she put a pause on it. And we're going to do exactly that. We know that there are still some serious issues in making sure that paramedics have the ability to treat patients on site through the full scope of their ability. That's one of the things we've been trying to get more implementation on. We know that we have to have more efficient ambulance drop-offs so that the paramedics are not sitting and waiting for hours. They need to be able to efficiently drop those patients off so that they can be seen by a nurse or doctor immediately and they can get back out on the road.
Where are we on the triage doctors? Those were promised long ago, the triage liaison physicians in emergency rooms. Where's that?
Yeah, we did end up, I think, finally coming to an agreement with the AMA, and I'm glad that they did come to an agreement on what the payment structure would be for that. But I'll have to do a quick check back in to see what the implementation on that is. But that is going to be an important role, because if you've got a triage doc able to see somebody right away and say, hey, here's a prescription, you can move on. Oh, we need to move you to the front of the queue, and not have that delay in the emergency room, it's going to make a big difference.
There's a lot to unpack in that clip for obvious reasons. First of all, let's start with, once again, we see from Danielle Smith that the way to implement policy change in this province is not evidence-based. It's not anything other than, oh, somebody said this thing to me and I kind of liked it. So, and I mean, I'm conflicted on this one. I really, really am. Because on one hand, speaking only for myself and not for any organizations that may or may not employ me or I may or may not be affiliated with, I hated everything about the rebrand. I absolutely did. And I know I wasn't alone on that. So I'm glad that proverbial sword of Damocles is no longer hanging over me and my friends in the way that it was up until Adriana LaGrange made her little announcement. But I find myself remaining alarmed that it was, according to Danielle Smith, a handful of paramedics who reached out to her and said, this is very bad. Because again, it goes to that we're not following the pathways, the proper pathways to do policy or things. It's based entirely on access. It's based entirely on who's got who on speed dial. And that's really problematic for a long list of reasons. But we also got to talk about the triage liaison physician piece that Danny brought up there, because there's a lot going on there. And by way of recap, the triage liaison physician was originally announced. It was originally announced in January 15th, 2026. It was a result of the unfortunate death of an Edmonton man, Mr. Sri Kumar, who died after presenting to the emergency room with alarming symptoms. And as we heard in our conversations with Dr. Paul Parks on a previous episode, he was triaged at the second highest level of triage that you can possibly be triaged at. But it still took hours for him to be seen. And unfortunately, tragically, it was too late for any interventions for whatever the thing was to be effectively applied. And he passed away. He's not the only one. We've seen multiple stories. We saw recently, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a tragic story of a man who was transported to hospital by EMS, and he was triaged as a CTAS-2. Again, this is straight from Dr. Paul Parks. And unfortunately, because of the sheer volume, the sheer number of the CTAS-2 patients, that's the second. CTAS-1 is you're going to a very special saved room for the very worst of the worst situations. CTAS-2, you definitely need to be seen. And as Dr. Paul Parks articulated when we had our last conversation with him, the goal is 15 minutes. This gentleman was triaged as CTAS-2, sent to the waiting room where he also passed away. So that's what this triage liaison physician thing is in response to. And we are now the better part of almost exactly 6 months away from when it was announced. And when it was announced, it was going to be just a matter of weeks. According to Danny, there's now an agreement in place, but there's no known date of implementation. Now, we've looked and we've reached out to a few folks, and nobody's been able to confirm for us that there is an implementation date. But even going back just to June 3rd, so we're just going back like a week and a half, there was no agreement still in place as of June 3rd from the CBC article. President Dr. Brian Wurzba said at one point the AMA escalated the issue to Premier Daniel Smith's office and is hopeful they'll find an arrangement within a month. So again, we find ourselves in the same position that we were just in, where the only way to get anything effectively done or dealt with is to have Danny on speed dial and be able to speak to her in a way that she'll be able to hear it so that she can prioritize whatever the problems are and deal with them directly. And that's not good. It's not good for a long list of reasons. In theory, you should have ministers who are entirely capable of managing their portfolios. They should be able to hear things from the bureaucrats who do the actual work, and make decisions and give direction in line with government policy. But all too often, it seems like everybody's sitting on their hands waiting for Danny to decide what she's going to do if she wants to do something and if it ever draws her attention, which is not an effective way to run government. Because even in just these two examples, those are two examples of things that have fallen through the cracks. Let's be clear. LaGrange made the announcement on the 10th of June. It had been almost a full month since the implementation of the EMS branding had been in place. And it was only when somebody rang Danny's bell that things changed enough that she decided to step in. One has to wonder, if somebody hadn't rang Danny's bell, would that very, very awful rebrand have gone ahead? It's entirely possible. We'll likely never know the answer until they unpause things and we get to see what horror show they have ready to unveil then. But even with the triage liaison physicians, this is a medical crisis. This is something that physicians have been standing up and saying this needs to be dealt with immediately. People are literally dying in the waiting rooms preventably. This is not what should be happening. It's taken almost 6 months. That's unacceptable. And if this quote from Dr. Brian Wurzba is correct, that the AMA had to escalate things to the Premier's office in order to get things moving, and because of that, he's optimistic that there will be an announcement by the end of the month, then it just underscores how impotent, ineffective, puppety the ministers in charge of these various departments are, because it seems like they can't get anything done, even the most basic, fundamental things that government has committed to, without Danny's permission. And the inverse also is very likely true, because if a minister says, hey, there's this really important thing that I want to do, and it doesn't align with Danny's current chemtrail worldview, one can only imagine that it would be very, very hard for that minister to get anything done. There's that piece. But the other piece that's really important to highlight is this notion of when we get the triage liaison physicians, they'll just be able to throw prescriptions at people willy-nilly, and that will get them outside of the emergency department. That's not how that works. If somebody's going to an emergency department for a prescription refill, one would hope they would get turned away and sent to a walk-in clinic, or sent to their GP who originally prescribed that prescription, because that is not an appropriate use of an emergency room, and it's not, for most medications, an emergency. So let's just get that out of the way there, shall we? If a physician is going to be prescribing a new prescription, you can't just look at someone and go, I feel like you might be an amitriptyline problem today, so there you go. there are tests that have to be done. There are diagnostics that have to be done. There are assessments that have to be done. You can't just throw pill bottles at people and spin them out the door unless, of course, you're trying to create another opioid crisis. So we have this misinformed, ill-informed, deliberately misleading, I don't know, rhetoric that continues to come from the Premier of Alberta, and it's deeply harmful because, again, this is not a recording of Danielle Smith at a cocktail party. This is Danielle Smith on her radio show that she does every 2 weeks to an audience of, I'm sure it's at least on par with the Breakdowns audience. It's much bigger than that. I have no illusions about that. That was a self-deprecatory joke. But the fact that she's spewing this stuff unchecked is really, really quite problematic. Moving on from there. We're going to talk about the NDP because there's some good. And then there's some, I don't know what's happening there. I have some questions. So we'll start with the good news, I guess. It's kind of piecemeal. The NDP released a series of policy announcements, and some of these are substantial. The first one we're going to get to, cutting electricity bills by 10%, increasing the minimum wage predictably to $18 and then tying to inflation. So minimum wage and then tying it to inflation. That is a good thing. That is something that is entirely within the government's purview. Reducing grocery prices by increasing competition, appointing a grocery watchdog, and ending shrinkflation. I have some questions about that one as well. Ending junk and nuisance fees while making it easier to cancel subscriptions, helping people buy their first homes more quickly, removing the 13-cent per liter provincial gas tax while prices remain high. So again, and I want to be clear, some of those things are absolutely within government power and authority. No question. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts of some of the bigger things like electricity prices, the explanation that was offered was a bit lacking.
We'll cut electricity bills by a target of 10% by working with industry to ensure that we're getting rid of wasteful things that are costing you money and refix. I was going to use the word refixing. Is that a good word, Kyle?
We'll use it today.
And fixing the terribly broken electricity system design that this government has foisted upon us. We know that electricity bills went up by as much as 300% to 400%. Under the UCP. That's not normal. It's not right. It's because we have a government that doesn't know what it's doing.
To address electricity bills, we will implement a coordinated effort across the entire electrical system, working with the regulator, generators, wires owners, and retailers to ensure Alberta's electricity market is stabilized and delivers consistent and more affordable bills for Albertans.
So there's some levers that are within the realm of government, but most of what was expressed in the explanation for the electricity prices is we will ask the companies that are tasked with making profit to not make as much profit, and we'll see how that goes. I'm no historian, but I don't believe it goes well. However, there was this... It was a weird presser, and it was a weird presser for a bunch of different reasons. First of all, they had 2 university students out, and one of them spent a good amount of time putting out very serious, I'm not happy to be here, please send help vibes. The other thing that happened during the presser that was quite remarkable is that we had an appearance of head down, because for a not inconsequential part of the press conference, somebody's head was in front of the camera taking what I'm sure were very, very good pictures. But it was another one of the so close but not quite there moments that we've seen from the NDP that one can only hope they're going to refine, particularly with, watch this pivot here, the news. And I just want to say internally, called it, because we saw the announcement from none other than former journalist, Mr. Sean Amato. This announcement came out on June 9th. Very excited to announce I'm joining the Alberta NDP caucus as Director of Communications. These are pivotal times for the province I was born and raised in, and Albertans deserve a good, honest, pro-Canada government. And that's not nothing. I have said very nice things about Mr. Amato many times in the past because he was a hell of a journalist and he knew how to structure questions. He knew how to answer questions. He knew how to do the media thing. So fingers crossed, we're only going to see NDP comms make less preventable mistakes. Seriously, watch the whole video. I felt so bad for that young lady because she just looked so uncomfortable. Moving on from there, we got some polling we got to talk about. Things are not going good for Danny. Oh no, not even a little bit. She is now, as of June 2026, for premier approval. This is a new poll done by Angus Reid. She is 6th ranked in the province. The approval ratings are not good. And in fact, if we take a look at where they have traveled since June of 2025, in June of 2025, she was at 51%. June of 2026, she has plummeted down to 39%. That's not nothing. I can't help but notice Wab Canoe's approval rating is like head and shoulders above everybody, 62%. It's almost as if people like authenticity and not being gaslit all the time. I can't imagine. I tried to milk that for as long as I possibly could. But what is particularly telling, it's not just the approval numbers that are breathtaking. It's the overall disapproval numbers. So 39% approval, not great. There are 5% who are not sure, can't say. On the best, if we gave all of that 5% over to the no, we really do approve of her, that only brings Danny to 44%. 56% of Albertans disapprove of the work that Danielle Smith is doing. Juxtapose that with the past provincial vote. She had 72% approval in the past provincial election, with only 26% disapproving. That's massive. That's absolutely massive. And the fact that 56%, like 39% of people being like, yeah, no, I think you're doing great. And there's always that little mushy middle, but the middle is, it's only 5%. 56% of Albertans disapprove of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith right now. So if ever there was a time for a up-and-coming comms director to do some comms stuff, that would be a good time. Sean, please. And obviously I am a little bit biased here, and I'm going to just own that right now, because Danielle Smith is doing things with her government that are demonstrably harmful. But there are some things that progressives are doing that are not helping things. And a really good example of that is the whole conversation that's going on about public health inspectors right now, because it is a bad situation. I want to be very, very clear about that. The situation that the public health inspectors are facing right now is bad. It's not good. It's very suboptimal. It's also been grossly misrepresented. And one of the things that happens when you turn the outrage machine up to 12 unjustifiably is that people look at what you did and they go, well, but you kind of blew it out of proportion there a little bit, didn't you? Is that just lighting your hair on fire for the sake of lighting your hair on fire, or what's going on there? So we're going to take a couple minutes to try to unpack this thing, because wow, have we been getting tagged in a lot. With good reason, because if the province was doing away with all health inspectors, that would be very, very bad. I take nothing away from that. But that's not what's happening. So let's talk about what is actually happening in order to try to make sense of the situation that is, again, to be clear, bad. At the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, it comes back to this letter. Actually, no. Before we do the letter, we're going to do the clip. Because a health inspector did call into your province, your premier, and she actually did a really good job of articulating, what her primary concern was. So I'm going to let her speak for herself before we get into the nuts and bolts of this.
Hello, Premier.
Hi.
I'm a rural public. Hi. I'm a rural public health inspector in East Central Alberta, and my husband farms here, and our children are here, and our family is deeply rooted in this community. Because I live, work, and raise my family here, I understand the events, traditions, and practices unique to rural communities I serve. You've said you'll protect rural jobs and frontline workers with all the changes, but public health inspectors are facing concerns about being centralized into urban or regional centers such as Red Deer, along with potential reductions in compensation and worker conditions through this restructuring. My communities are only now learning what these changes could mean for keeping professional jobs in rural Alberta. Can you commit today that rural public health inspectors will not be centralized into urban or regional centers, required to relocate away from the communities they serve, or face reductions in compensation and working conditions as a result of this restructuring?
Well,
Sorry, I'm just
no,
frustrated.
it's okay. I understand. That's not the intention. The intention is to make acute care and hospital services only do acute care and hospital services. And so public health inspectors, by definition, don't work in a hospital and don't perform surgeries. And so they're in the wrong department. So we're trying to align all of the things that go into preventative and community health services in a different department. So the intention is for it to be a lift into the other department. And there wasn't an intention to reduce the numbers because we know we need them, or to centralize because there are health inspections that need to be done all over this province. And so it wouldn't make much sense to have it in an urban center and then have somebody have to drive 2 to 3 hours to go do their inspections on a daily basis. So if that's the fear, then I sure will take that away. The new minister, Justin Wright, he comes from a rural constituency himself. I'm sure he isn't interested in seeing everything centralized into just the big cities. So I'll take it away to allay your fears. But I just wanted you to know that that's the movement that we've gone to with the refocusing, is that everything that is in a hospital or related to surgery should be under a specific department. And we want to make sure that we don't have any other issues that would be distracting away from that goal, because the number one thing we have to do is get our hospitals functioning properly again.
All right. So fears to be allayed.
I will work on that with Justin Wright, the health minister. It's the first I've heard that people are concerned that there's going to be job losses. Again, not the intention.
Okay, so let's go through that clip to begin with. The woman who called in, very concerned about the potential of having to uproot her family or give up her job, which is an entirely legitimate concern. And as we'll see in a minute, there are grounds for that. To be clear, 100%, there are grounds for those concerns. The other things I just want to highlight really quick is Danielle Smith again talked about intention. It is not intention that solely defines the outcome of a situation. I forget. There's a path to somewhere that's paved with good intentions. I forget what is that place. Somebody remind me in the chat if you could, because I feel like there's some sort of maxim about that. There's an expression about where you go if you focus only on good intentions without any sort of measurable metrics or outcome monitoring. But Danny likes to talk about intentions. Here's the other thing that's really important, because it's another example of how Danielle Smith is very, very good at making it sound like she's committing to something without actually committing. I'm going to take it away. I'm going to talk to Justin Wright, radio host, comes in. So fears allayed, long pause. I will work on that. So that's not we're going to make sure that even if these people need to be Government of Alberta employees, we're going to make sure that they stay in their communities. That's not what that comment was. So anybody who heard that and thought Danny's going to take care of it would do well to disabuse themselves of that notion. But where does this all come from? Danny did kind of explain the mechanics. So there's a bunch of health inspectors who work for Alberta Health Services. They're being transferred to government roles. And it is the management of that transfer that is problematic. And it all comes down in no small way to this letter of understanding. This is a letter of understanding that the multiple unions, HSAA and I believe AUPE, provided to media to say, look at this thing, this is where the problems are. And they did highlight a few of the areas where they've identified the problems. Let's go through what those problems are so we can talk about what we're talking about. The first problem that they identify, the government wants to red circle wages for 2 years. In theory, that means that somebody who moves over from the silo they're in to the other silo would be making the same as they do now. But in 2 years, who knows what's going to happen? There could be a pay cut. And that's valid. The government will not guarantee they will offer you a new position in the same city where you currently work. And that's the biggest one, because if you actually take a look at what that letter says, the language is really quite problematic. It talks about, hey, to the extent possible, employees will be offered positions in the city where they currently work. Now, city is not the greatest terminology to be using there, because as that caller clearly articulated, she does not work in a city. She does not want to work in a city because they've got this farm out in the middle of East Central Alberta. She would like not to have to give that up, please and thank you. Which is not an unreasonable request, because it doesn't make sense when you think about the big cities. They're all very right in the middle line of the province. But to say to someone, hey, you have to show up for work at your office in Red Deer and then drive for 5 hours to get to one of the border areas every single day to do your inspections when you've been responsible for this geographic area in the past, makes absolutely no sense. It's absolutely bonkers. Why they would include that provision in the letter is absolutely cause for concern. That's not all that the AUPE is concerned about. They put up limits on your ability to request a review of the new Government of Alberta classifications they have assigned you. So when somebody moves over from the AHS role that they were previously occupying to the GOA role, those positions don't have the same names. And so the last page of the letter of understanding includes at least one where maybe we're going to change things around a little bit. If the transition results in wage increases for you, your wage increase anniversary, the date you receive a yearly step increase, will be reset as per GOA policy. If the government's proposed benefit entitlement dates do not overlap with your current benefits, there may be a gap of time where you do not have coverage. We also told the government that you gave AUPE a strong mandate to protect your work from home arrangements, to which the government said no. So there's a lot going on there. But it does not mean that the government of Alberta is firing every single health inspector. So let's talk about what we're talking about. The reality is there is a hypothetical worst case scenario where if the letter of understanding is not agreed upon, if they don't get that little piece of conversation on something where they can both agree, both AUPE and the government agree, these are the criteria that we're going to use for moving everybody from this silo to this silo. If they can't get that organized, what happens? And in normal times, the answer would be, well, we'll figure it out as we go. We're going to move everybody over. We're going to keep things the status quo until we figure out how to proceed from there. But we're going to change the reporting arrangements and all of that crap. That would be the normal times response. We do not live in normal times. And unfortunately, this is a government that does not do a great job of instilling confidence in their decision-making ability. Kind of why we have this show. So there are very real concerns that this could result in some people choosing not to continue in their roles. And there is the hypothetical worst case apocalypse now scenario where the roles don't happen, and so they fire everybody, and then they try to hire them back. And what happens if half the people go, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to leave this community that I have generationally been in and I'm raising my kids in and I'm part of. So good luck. That is a very real concern. So there's no doubts that the situation has been largely mismanaged, and I don't want to diminish that. But it is not that the province is getting rid of all of the health inspectors. So there's the breakdowns, explanation of what happened, what's happening. We don't have any answers yet. It's the weekend. Hopefully everybody sorts themselves out and the province recognizes that, yeah, no, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having people who live in the community. One could make, if they were creative enough, an argument that if Danielle Smith is going to say that we should have sheriffs in these rural communities because they're part of the community, they live there, they work there, they're part of the fabric, then the same should apply to health inspectors, both being government roles, of course. Sheriffs don't commute for 5 hours to get to the places that they're going to work out of. Why should health inspectors? There's lots of logic that we could use to unproblem this situation. Hopefully that happens, but we're not losing all the health inspectors yet. So let's keep our fingers crossed that somebody decides to grow up. Moving on from there and continuing on the downward spiral, we got to talk about the water, not coal petition, because boy, there's some pieces going on here. And unfortunately, this is one of those things where I strongly suspect it will go badly. For anybody who's not familiar, the Water Not Coal petition is a petition that was put forward by Corb Lunt. And there has been, in the same way that we saw with the Forever Canadian petition, there's been some misrepresentation that's gone on with this thing. And we need to talk about that for a quick sec. And in order to do that, we're actually going to go straight to the documents, to the things, because here is the application form. We got it off Elections Alberta for the Citizen Initiative petition. Corb Lunt's demographics and stuff are all blacked out because nobody wants to be doxxed. But you can see this is the petition. We've got we're going to go through it. Don't worry. We've got the explanation of what he would like because there's a C attached. But let's go through the big pieces that are important in understanding what is likely to happen next. First of all, let's take a look at the type of petition. So it is a legislative proposal. There's 3 different types of proposals that you can put forward under the Citizen Initiative Act. This is a legislative proposal. The subject area of the petition, no new coal mining in the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. And then for the statement setting out the subject matter of the proposed policy, it says, please see attached. So the citizens-initiated referendum application that Corb Lunt put forward is a legislative petition. That's important. We'll get to why in a minute. Let's talk about what it is specifically that he is asking for. Well, there's a bunch of whereases, but the legislative petition on the following question should be: the government of Alberta shall prohibit through legislation, because it's a legislative petition, all coal exploration and mining activities within the eastern slopes of Alberta's Rockies other than the mines that are in actual production as of January 1st, 2026. For clarity, this prohibition includes Northback Holdings' Grassy Mountain Project and Valerie Reese's Blackstone Project, as well as any projects to expand any producing mines. So the proposal is, if you have a mine going right now, you can finish what you're doing. You don't get to expand. And if you're an Australian billionaire who has spent the last several years trying to buy off the residents of Blairmore and Coleman allegedly, with fancy projects, then you do not get to have your mind, ma'am. That's what it says. And the map is the map at the very, very end there. So that's what the proposal is. And we saw some news this last week because Corbland did submit the collective signatures. He says that he got enough. So now we enter, this happened on June 10th. Now we enter the verification stage of things. And of course, we go back to Danny on your province, your premier, because the thing that a lot of people were worried about, she seems to be saying, is absolutely going to happen.
You've previously stated that you support direct democracy and that if he got the numbers, this also could end up on the ballot. So if the signatures are verified by July 1, will you commit to honoring the exact wording of his petition, or are you going to alter and rephrase the question?
Well, I can tell you that I looked at the petition, and it calls for a legislative proposal. So I have to figure out what that means. That means that's got to go to a committee, just as the Forever Canada petition did. And it's members from the opposition as well as members from the government, and they will do the review, talk to Justice, figure out what exactly that would mean, and then make a recommendation. And so there's a process that is outlined in the Act. That's the process, and we'll follow that process along on this one too.
I can tell you, so you know what's coming next. And we're going to talk about what that process that Danny has so clearly committed herself to, because it very much seems like her love of direct democracy does not extend to direct democracy if it does not align with her worldview. So what happens after all of this is done? Assuming, of course, that the petition is verified to have the required number of signatures. Now, Corbland says that he exceeded the amount by a good number. So there's a very good reason. It's reasonable to assume at this point in time, there's no evidence to the contrary, that the petition will not be considered to be successful. But we don't know until Elections Alberta has done its 21-day verification process where they go through it all and they're like, yes, these are all good. And no, that one is not real. Roger Rabbit is not a resident of Rocky View County. He cannot sign this petition. Once that is done, this is where things get complicated because according to the Act, on receiving a copy of a legislative proposal in accordance with Section 12(1)A, the Speaker of the Legislature shall lay the proposal before the Legislative Assembly if it is then sitting, or if it is not then sitting, within 15 days of the commencement of the next sitting, and within 10 days after the proposal is tabled, the government shall bring forward a motion to have the proposal referred to a committee of the Legislative Assembly. So, if the petition is real, they have the signatures, they're good to go, then the Speaker of the Elections Alberta gives it to the Speaker, and the Speaker goes, thank you very much for the stack of papers, and then he takes it to the Legislative Assembly. That's the NDP and the UCP on their two sides of the big room. If it's sitting, if it's not sitting, then it has to be done within 15 days of the next sitting. And then within 15 days, within 10 days of it being presented to the legislature, there has to be a committee formed that then takes a look and makes recommendations. There's no hard lines on how quickly the committee moves, as we saw with the Forever Canadian petition. It took over 40 days before they had their first meeting because they really didn't want to have their meeting until the separatists got killed in court. And they realized they needed to carve themselves something of a backdoor out of the Forever Canadian petition. So it's 90 days that they have to get back with an answer after that initial 25 days. But here's the problem. If we take a look at when the legislature is next sitting, The legislature does not sit. The grown-ups don't all get together in the big room again until October 27th. And this is a problem for a bunch of different reasons. The very first reason has to do with the duties in regards to the legislative proposal. So let's take a look at that. Again, on receiving a copy of the legislative proposal in accordance with Section 12(1)(a), the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly shall, all the things we said. The committee to which a legislative proposal is referred shall, within 90 days of the proposal being referred to it in the Legislative Assembly or sitting after it, if not sitting within 15 days, table the report, table the recommendations. And this is where it gets really complicated, because if you take a look at the actual act, what it says is that within there's a blackout period. So this is one of the many changes that the UCP made to the Citizens Initiative Act. They created a blackout period where a year before the next election and a year after the next election, you can't have any citizen-initiated referendums. The legislature doesn't sit until October 27th. That is like 2 weeks shy, week and a half shy of being a full calendar year from the next scheduled general election. So even if the UCP very, very quickly, first day, yes, we will have this committee, here are our members, it's going to take days for that whole process to go on, maximally up to almost 120 days, because they got the 90 days for the committee, and then they got the 25 days to form the committee and do the tabling of the report and all of that. And that puts it well within the 1 year blackout period. So you can't have citizen-initiated referendum inside of that 1 year blackout period. That's just how it works for a legislative question. That's just how it works. You also can't have it 1 year after a general election. So if Danny chooses to follow the rules that she made, and again, we've seen these rules change an awful lot over the last little while, and she could at any point, to be clear, she absolutely could at any point say, hey, you know what? Boy, this got awkward. We made these rules about this blackout period. Well, unintended consequences. That wasn't the intention. So we're gonna make an exception here. I'm gonna use my power under the Referendum Act, which she absolutely does have, to say, hey, this is the question. We want to honor the work that was done by these people who did this all in good faith, and I believe so strongly in direct democracy that I'm going to step outside of the rules as written in the act and do it. But again, that's not what she just said on her radio show. What she said on her radio show is she is absolutely not going to do that. She's going to follow the rules under the Citizen Initiative Act. So we now have a 2 year period with which, I don't know, Northback or any of these other mines could do their submissions to get their expansions, to start their work, to become established coal mines. And now all of a sudden they would fall outside of the catchment of that question, because you can't just let, as Danny has said many times, you can't just let industry get started on something and not. One would make the argument, one could make the argument that if the Northback had any indication that the fix was not in, they would take a look at this referendum question if it's deemed to be successful and go, oh, well, we don't want to mess with that, because Danny could call a referendum any day now on this, and she's certainly got the mandate from the 200,000 or so Albertans who signed the petition. We don't like unstable business environments, so see ya. Northback has not given any indication that that's even slightly on their radar. Do with that what you will. But again, this gets back to Danielle Smith is very, very good at saying things in such a way that people hear what they want to hear. She is a very good, and I've said this before on the show, she's a very powerful communicator. But one of the secret weapons in the Danny arsenal is she can say things in such a way that they can be interpreted in multiple ways. Let's take a listen.
The UCP government elected in 2023 didn't have a mandate to open up the coal mines. Could you commit to us as quickly as you did to the separatists that you would hold a referendum on coal mining in Alberta and abide by the results?
Chris, I think you know how citizen-initiated referendum works. You have the ability to, and we did lower the threshold to make it easier for anyone to put a question to the people. You could sign up 177,000 people, and then we could put it on a referendum, absolutely. So you feel free to go ahead and do that.
And you would abide by the results.
Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, sure, because what would happen in a yes-no referendum is that there'd be a yes side and there'd be a no side, and Albertans would have to decide if paying $14 billion instead of paying it on schools and hospitals and roads to manage industry is what they want to do, or whether they think that a reasonable amount of mines can go forward so that we can generate a few $100 million per year. That would happen in a referendum. I encourage you, by all means, because I believe in citizen-initiated referendum, I believe in democracy. I strongly encourage you. The new rules, I believe, are going to be proclaimed as of July 1st. You have a 120-day period to gather the signatures. The threshold is the 10% of the previous voter turnout in the last election. It's 177,000 people. So I encourage you to go ahead and do that, and let's have the debate.
Now, to be clear, the date on the video, the bottom of the video clip is wrong. That was from June 11th, 2025, not 2026. And that was Danielle Smith speaking at the Fort Macleod Town Hall that went very, very badly for her and her friends because a boatload of people showed up and gave her all kinds of hell around the whole coal mining question, around the selenium in the water, around protecting ranchers, around protecting the agri-food business. The list goes on and on and on. The gentleman that you heard speaking at the beginning there was former Mayor of Lethbridge, Chris Spearman. And I mean, Danny was condescending as all hell. Sure, yeah, we can have a conversation. Albertans can decide whether they want schools or roads or coal mines. I guess it's up to you to decide what you really want. And I'm only slightly paraphrasing there. You can go back and listen to it. It was really quite remarkable. But she was very clear. Yeah, no, absolutely. If you want to go ahead and do and follow the rules of the thing that we've put up, then yeah, you can have your referendum. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, love to have the debate. I love when she's challenged and gets just angry. But that's not the only example of her kind of committing to the referendum earlier this year. And the date on this is right. February 20th, 2026, after she announced her 9 referendum questions, this came up.
There are a couple of citizen-initiated petitions out there, some of which will finish in time for that vote to be put on the ballot as well, if they get the requisite number of signatures and they're validated. So whether it's the independence petition or the coal petition, if they get the requisite number of signatures, our intention would be to put those on the ballot at the same time.
Okay, so same ballot, same day.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some wordplay going on there. There are a couple of petitions, some of which, I mean, there's only 2. That's a couple. I don't know. You have some of 2. It's 1 or both. I don't know how you fractionally divide 2 petitions into some. But again, here we go. We're in the land of Danny speak. Some of which may be finished in time. And if they do, if they finish in time, then our intention would be to put them on that ballot. And a lot of people heard that quote and went, oh, she's going to do it. She said right there that she would put it on. But here's the problem. The end date for the signatures to be handed in for the Water Not Coal petition was June 10th. They met that goal, and they may have very well met the signatures. And Danny has signaled in other subtle ways that she would, if they meet the deadline, put forward the question. But she doesn't have to. She has to choose to. Because if she follows the process, which she said yesterday she's going to do, that process can't even be started until the October referendum is done. And if you take a look at the technicalities of the constitutional question, well, that's one of the areas where the UCP did remove some sections of the law while they were removing other sections of the law. And there's now no requirement for a constitutional question. If it is a straight up constitutional referendum question, like the separatists' petition was, there's no requirement for it to go to committee. So there's a reasonable universe where one can look at what Danielle Smith said there. And while she's saying it in such a way that the average reasonable person would go, oh, hey, she just said, if they get the signatures, if they meet the deadline, then they'll do it. But if you listen to it with the context of her knowing that one of those petitions, the separatist one, had it not been stopped in the courts, would have not had the encumbrance, that was my big word for the day, the encumbrance of going through committee, and the other one, the Water Not Coal petition, would have the encumbrance of going through committee. Listen to the clip again with that in mind. And all of a sudden, what Danny's actually saying gets to be pretty clear.
There are a couple of citizen-initiated petitions out there, some of which will finish in time for that vote to be put on the ballot as well, if they get the requisite number of signatures and they're validated. So whether it's the independence petition or the coal petition, if they get the requisite number of signatures, our intention would be to put those on the ballot at the same time.
Okay, so same ballot, same day.
Yeah.
See the wordplay? See the games? I want to be very, very clear. Danielle Smith could absolutely, as the Premier of Alberta, exercise her powers under the Referendum Act and say, you know what? That thing that I said on Saturday, I was just playing you guys. I was just being a little silly. No, absolutely. I said that if they got the number of questions and it was verified, that we would go ahead with the question. We put it on the ballot. And if Elections Alberta comes up and says, yeah, here's all of the questions. Here's all the signatures. They passed the mark. They're good to go. This is a valid petition. She could absolutely say, yeah, you know what? We were kind of making this up as we went. We made some changes as we went. It's easy to understand how there's some confusion, but I believe in direct democracy, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do it regardless. She could do that. I do not, for 1 second, believe that she will. I don't believe it, because Danielle Smith's method of communication is only to be understood through the lens of bad faith. I truly do not believe that she is capable of good faith communication. I think there's always that whole card. I think there's always that too clever by half machinations going on in her head where she thinks that she's holding something back. And if I just say it this way, then I'll be able to skirt the issue. But the problem with that is it's disingenuous and it's insincere. And it's probably a big part of the reason why Wab Kinew is currently sitting at the approval rate that he's sitting at, and Danielle Smith is currently plummeting in the polls. Moving on from there. And I want to be clear. You can take a little sip of water for this next segment because I'm going to have me some fun. Let's talk for a second I think we all need a little bit of fun, a little bit of what we're about to do here. So we're going to do it. And we're going to be back on Thursday, like I said, for the open mic. And we're going to be happy to get into all of the things that we're going to be getting into there. But let's take a moment and reflect back on our good friends. I am so getting an email at the Western Standard because it turns out if you Google the Western Standard and the Breakdown AB, one of the things that the Google AI comes up with is, the Breakdown really holds the Western Standard's feet to the fire. That's part of their whole ethos. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that because, again, I believe in the importance of authenticity. And there's very little in this little world that gets my ire quite as quickly as feigned authenticity. It gets boy, does that get my attention? Because if you're faking it, I know you're hiding something. And that's what we do here. We go looking when people are hiding things. So let's take a quick sec to talk about our good friends at the Western Standard who don't like me. And there's a bunch of different pieces that we got to talk about here. One of the themes that you may or may not, I'm not saying you should, legal disclaimer, draw out of this is that the Western Standard has motivations. Now, they say some of their motivations are we're gonna read some of their motivations in a minute, so their motivations can speak for themselves. But another one of their motivations seems to be the money, and capitalizing on things that are current. The Western Standard. I looked at the CBC. I looked at the CTV. I looked at the Global. I looked at a bunch of different news outlets who are serious, credible news outlets, and none of them have stores that take a particular political position. The Western Standard, as you can see here, here, left hand, point with the left hand. They have a merch shop. Nothing wrong with that. The Breakdown has a merch shop. You got to pay the bills. I take nothing away from that. Their merch shop, though, has a very special branch that's all about Alberta independence. They have a Republic of Alberta mug. They have a golden cap that you can get. They have the hoodie. They have a whole line of merch that is Western Standard separatism branded merch. And that's not news. That's not journalism. That's something else. You can leave what you believe it is in the comments. But that is part of the overall challenges with the Western Standard, because let's talk about the values that the Western Standard used to have. I don't know. Here's a screenshot from May 19th, 2024. The Western Standard, this is from their advertising section, by the way. The Western Standard offers advertisers great readership numbers are priced below the, that's the first time I've noticed that sentence is missing a word. The Western Standard offers advertisers great readership numbers are priced below the major mainstream media competitors. We do this by achieving a very high level of readership with remarkably low overhead. Our 1.5 million average page views is due in large part to our willingness to cover stories and angles often ignored by mainstream corporate media, most of which are owned in central Canada and subsidized by the federal government, while breaking the mold of our old mainstream competitors. We strictly adhere to established journalistic standards. This allows us to straddle a large, mostly empty market between the mainstream and alternative media. The Western Standard proudly refuses to accept any government funding whatsoever. No government funding, damn it! Our readers know this is important in building a trustable brand with large readership across Western Canada. Now you might be wondering why I bring that up. because we did a whole episode on this. We're going to recap a little bit of it because I think it may be germane to the greater conversation and certainly the developments that we saw this week. Because the reason why we screen capped that back when we did was because the Western Standard in many ways built their brand on exactly what they said there. They refused to take any government funding whatsoever. In some of their earlier promotional videos where they were telling people that you should buy a membership to the Western Standard in order to support independent journalism, they talked about how anybody who took government funding whatsoever was compromising their editorial control, and that doing so meant that they would write the stories that the government told them to, because if you're reliant on the government advertising or funding teat, then you will be their lapdog. It was very dramatic. Seriously, there was like music and explosions and all kinds of fun stuff in the video. You can find that if you go back on our and look at our Western Standard episode. But why do I bring this all up? Because a little while back, we noticed that in a shocking turn of events, the Western Standard was advertising for the government of Alberta. It was right there on their websites. They had the banner ads going on. And that struck us as dissonant because Derek Fildebrandt, the publisher of the Western Standard, had done such a good job of talking about the importance of making sure that they were independent and did not take any government money. But there were all of these government advertisements on there. Weird, right? And there were some people, when we raised that initially on the Twitter machine, there were some people who said, well, you know what, though? Maybe they're just buying, they're selling ad space to one of those ad aggregate folks that just sells ads for whatever, that you see on all those like really sad web pages that are just desperately trying to get any revenue whatsoever. Maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We decided to find out. So we filed ourselves a FOIP and we got back some information. Redacted. It was all redacted on our first go. All of the funding amounts were hidden because it could hurt. One of the justifications used in the FOIP was that it could hurt the business interests of a third party. I imagine if you built your brand in part on not taking any government money, demonstrating that you had been taking government money could be harmful to your brand, but that's a choice. We are, however, at the breakdown here, quite persistent. And so we kept going. We decided to be like, hey, I don't think you actually get to do that because you're spending taxpayer money. And that's not how the system's supposed to work. I don't think you get to withhold that. And we did, in fact, get the results. And it turns out that between 2022 and 2023, roughly a 1 year period, because from everything that we could tell, the funding started January in 2023, or it started in December of 2022, sorry, and then continued throughout 2023. The Western Standard received a grand total of $228,000 for advertising for the government of Alberta. And you might say, well, but Nate, that's just business stuffs. That's not funding. I would make the argument that if you're taking, again, $228,000 of government money for advertising, and that is part of your business model, that you are subservient to some degree, or reliant, especially when we're talking about numbers as big as $250,000. You are reliant on those government programs to some degree. And if that's how you're going to pitch it, then it seems perhaps some people might interpret it as a little misleading, a little disingenuous, perhaps. But that's advertising. It's not like if you go to the Government of Alberta grant directory and type in the Western Standard that you get, oh dear, you get a whole bunch of grants that were delivered under the Alberta the job grant, the Jobs Now program. It's not like you get those, and those all total up to an additional $109,796.18. That's exactly what happens. You can go do it right now. You can go look at the Government of Alberta grant disclosure, public disclosure, and if you type into the payments made to, if you click on the little funnely thing there and you put in the Western Standard, that's what you get. The darndest thing, just the darndest thing. And that we ran that story, and in a fascinating twist, shortly after, the Western Standard updated their advertising, because that was one of the only places that you could really find the firm commitment to not accepting any government funding. And they kept a lot of their original stuff, but they did make some changes. We reach over 2 million page views per month by covering stories in perspective, often ignored by the corporate press, most of which are based in central Canada and influenced heavily by what Ottawa wants, which is a bold statement with no evidence to back it up. Do with that what you will. By keeping our overhead low and focusing on high impact, relevant reporting, we offer a rare mix of reach and value. While breaking from the old legacy media model, we continue to adhere to established journalistic standards. This allows us to serve the large and largely neglected space between mainstream and alternative media. We are firmly opposed to government intervention or regulation of the press. Our independence is key to maintaining trust with our rapidly growing readership across Western Canada. I will note they did fix the first sentence. The Western Standard offers advertisers strong, loyal readership at rates well below those of the major mainstream media outlets. So they did fix that there. Good for them. But they also took out the claims that they don't take government money. Do with that what you will. Which brings us to this week. Because on June 8th, Mr. Fildebrandt came out with a challenge. Oh, he challenged hard. Very challenging, Mr. Derek Fildebrandt. And he released this little video here, being challenging.
Albertans are going to vote on independence or status quo on October 19th, and so we should have debates about this. Dozens of debates across Alberta and all major cities about the future of Alberta. So I want to challenge Thomas Lukaszuk, the head of Forever Canada, who put together the petition on the other side for the status quo, to a debate. Anytime, anywhere, the Western Standard will pay to host it, and we'll even give you half the tickets to fill with your side of the debate, and we'll make sure we have a mutually agreed upon neutral moderator. Thomas Lukaszuk, I'm challenging you to a debate. I hope to see you on the stage.
Okay, so let's be very, very clear. That was June 8th. The 8th of June, 2026. That date does, in fact, get to be a little bit important. Because we're going to go on a little adventure here. It's all detailed on our Substack as well, but I just could not let this go by without doing my bit. On a separate note, do you ever meet someone and just go, oh, I know exactly how this is going to go? I don't know what made me think of that. It's just totally random in my head that that little thought would bubble up. But that was the morning of June 8th. To be clear, that was released at 8:54 in the morning on June 8th on the Western Standard's their Twitter page. And it was followed up with an email. And we're going to spend a little time plucking some things out of this email because there's some details that might be important. This email was sent out where breaking from Derek Fildebrandt at 1:07 on June 8th. I formally challenged Thomas Lukaszuk to a debate. This morning, I extended a formal invite to the leader of Forever Canada, a federalist group in Alberta, to debate whether Alberta should remain in Canada or become independent. Federalist organizations and think tanks shouldn't be the only ones that host debates on this issue. This morning, he challenged. Okay, we're doing good so far. What else did he say about that challenge? Because if you remember, he was very, very clear about something else in the video there. He said that the Western Standard would pay for everything. They'd cover all the costs. They would do that out of the goodness of their heart, and they would give half the tickets to Thomas Lukasik. They were going to pay for the debate. What did the rest of the email say? It said, we must ensure Mr. Lukasik has no excuse whatsoever. All caps, red letters. Oh, we're being very dramatic, aren't we? To pull out of the debate. So the Western Standard will pay for it. We'll front all the costs. We'll pay the venue. We'll buy light refreshments. We'll handle everything. We don't want him to have any reason not to agree apart from a lack of interest in debating. We need your help to make this happen. To make this work, we need to fundraise $15,000. This will cover the cost of renting a venue, paying for the audiovisual equipment, and it'll ensure we can offer attendees light refreshments while keeping the ticket prices low. I just want to read the first sentence again. We must ensure Mr. Lukasik has no excuse whatsoever to pull out of the debate. Now, could have said, we want to ensure that Mr. Lukasik has no reason whatsoever not to agree to the debate. But when you say to pull out of the debate, that implies that you have pulled in to a thing. If you are considering pulling out, you must first be pulled in. That's just how that works. And so there is a very reasonable interpretation of that email that suggests that this debate was a possibility. Not only that, but we have to make sure that Thomas Lukasik doesn't pull out. Not that he doesn't agree to do it, but that he doesn't pull out. And, one can only think that a news organization such as the Western Standard, what uses words from time to time, I'm told, would be deliberate and careful about this fundraising email that they're sending out to their membership in, no less, Derek Fildebrand's name, they would choose those words deliberately with purpose. So if you're going to say we got to make sure that Thomas Lukasik doesn't pull out and we need to fundraise so that we can cover the costs, I don't know. Maybe I'm the only person who experiences a significant amount of dissonance with that, but I don't feel like I am. And that in and of itself prompted us to reach out to Mr. Lukasik and say, he's been on the show. I got a contact for him. And I said, Thomas, what's going on? What's going on here, man? Are you doing a debate with Western Standard? Because they said that they got to raise this money to stop you from pulling out. And we heard back. And we put this tweet up. We put breaking because we were doing a bit about the breaking. It's satirical to some degree. Despite a fundraising email today for a debate between Western Standard publisher Derek Fildebrand and Forever Canadian leader Thomas Lukasik, we've confirmed directly with Lukasik that there were no talks for a debate and he will not be, quote, debating them under any circumstances, end quote. That came out at 6:58, same day. A minute later, Thomas followed up with his own tweet, tagging the Western Standard. Online news has been brought to my attention that the Western Standard misleads Albertans that I've agreed to a debate and they are attempting to raise money for that event. Let me be clear, Forever Canadian declined to partake ever in any debates with the Western Standard. So we got some pieces in play now because, again, words and their meanings do in fact matter. And here we have Thomas Lukasik saying explicitly, unapologetically, that we declined. We are not interested in your debate. We do not appreciate you trying to fundraise. Stop it, please. Derek was very angry. He put up this tweet, quoting, we've confirmed directly with Lukasik that there were no talks for debate. And then he shared a screenshot, kind of, because there's some really important information missing from Derek's little screenshot here. He shows two emails from the Western Standard to one of the lawyers associated with Forever Canadian, and no replies up until one saying, hi, Josh, we have decided that we will not be committing to any debates at this time. Thank you for the offer. Other than that, there's no talks. There's the Western Standard spam mailing the lawyer over the course of the first one was sent on June 2nd, no reply. The second was sent on June 5th, and then we got the reply. But the weird thing, the super weird thing, is if you take a look at the screenshot that Derek put up, we got the dates for the two emails from the Western Standard, but it almost looks like the date of that email was deliberately cropped out. Whoa, I don't want to say deliberately. Maybe it was an accident. It's not like you can stitch together multiple screenshots to make sure that all relevant, pertinent information to demonstrate that you're behaving and communicating in good faith is readily available. We do that all the time here with tweets and social media posts. It's pretty standard practice, actually. But it wasn't on Derek's. And so we did a little bit more digging, a little bit more reaching out, and we got the response, the full response from the lawyer associated with Forever Canadian. When was that sent? Oh gosh, it was sent on June 5th, 2026 at 1:38 in the afternoon. So let's be crystal clear. Derek put up his invitation to Thomas Lukasik 3 days after he had already been told that they were not interested in having any debates by the lawyer affiliated with Forever Canadian. Explicitly told that. And Derek's response, the Western Standard's response, was to go, okay, but we really, really, really wanted to fundraise $15,000. And for the record, I really would love to know. Maybe I'm just not elite. I may not be one of those Eastern Laurentian elites. Fun fact, Derek is from out east. I don't know what made me think of that. Only moved to Alberta like a couple decades ago. But it's almost as if they were really excited about fundraising all of that money. And so they just decided to go ahead and do it anyways. And in fact, Derek released a video later that evening after all of this had played out, where he said, we did some name calling because he's a master debater. He did some name calling, called Thomas Lukasik a chicken for not debating him, and said that the whole reason why they did the challenge 3 days after Forever Canadian said we are absolutely not going to participate in any debates with you, the whole reason why he did the challenge and sent out the fundraising email that any reasonable interpretation could look at and go, yeah, he did kind of sort of say, he made it sound like Thomas was in, because he said that we got to stop Lukasik from pulling out. We got to make sure Lukasik doesn't pull out. He said that the reason for that was he was trying to turn up the heat on Lukasik. So, to be clear, Derek Fildebrandt was given a hard no. His response was then to turn up the heat and attempt to fundraise $15,000 for a debate that he had already been told was not going to happen. I have a bunch of different bits that have been floating around in my head about the kind of person that would hear somebody clearly, very clearly, say, no, I do not want to participate in this thing that you're suggesting that I participate in. And they instead decide to try to double down and tell all of their friends, all of their network that, oh, no, I'm still going to make this happen. There's a bunch of different ways that I can think of that people might describe that, but I don't really think I have to, because it's that guy. It's that guy right there. He bragged on his social media about, you can go to the Western Standard social media right now, and you'll find the video of Derek in his Western Standard hat standing out over what appears to be a very, very nice estate, talking about how Thomas Lukasik is a chicken, and the whole reason why they did the debate was to turn up the heat to try to get him to bend to Derek's mighty will. I'm paraphrasing that last bit. But again, it's just bad faith. And it blows my mind. And yes, Derek, we have saved the video that Derek Fildebrandt would, as a serious grown-ass man, breathlessly yell into his phone that the whole reason why they went ahead with the campaign for the event that they were told was absolutely not going to happen by the principle they required on for that event was because he was trying to turn up the heat. Just the most serious of people. And that's the Western Standard piece. Oh, I needed that for me. Because here's the thing. There is this propensity for bad faith conversations. And what I find really unfortunate, and I was thinking about this in the run-up to this conversation, is when you take a look at the media ecosphere or ecosystem of people that have their biases. I have my biases. I make no bones about that. I definitely have, I like to think that I have financial responsibility leanings, but I'm also very socially progressive with evidence-based backing. That's who I am. I don't like bullshit. I think that there's a lot of things that we could be doing a much better job of. I don't like when policy is made from a purely emotional and reactionary place. That's my bias. I wear that proudly. What I find fascinating is the number of conservative, air quotes, because I don't think they're real conservatives. That's what my whole thing is. But these faux conservatives who engage in these bad faith manipulations, they engage in these disingenuous efforts to manipulate people. I mean, it would have been very easy going back to the email that the Western Standard and Derek Fildebrandt sent out. It would have been very easy for them to say, we want to convince Thomas that this is going to happen. He's our first choice. We need to raise this $15,000 again. I don't know what kind of venue you're going to, but we need to raise this $15,000 in order to get the venue. And if we can't get Thomas, then we'll move on to somebody else. But we want to make sure that we're providing a business case to Thomas Lukasik that he should come out and do this event. They could have said something like that, but instead what they said was, we want to stop him from pulling out. And it's just, it's misleading. I don't know how you interpret it in any other way other than it's misleading. And it's not that he posted the misleading part on his social media. It's that he sent that out to the people who are his supporters, which is a particularly craven, to me, approach to doing things. If you're misleading the people who are there keeping the lights on for your thing, that is to me a profoundly disingenuous approach to things. It's just really, really, and it seems to be something that is ubiquitous among the conservative talking heads. Now, the problem on the progressive side is there aren't very many progressive talking heads. There's not. There's some amazing folks. I look at people like Cole Not Cole. I look at people like Lisa 0923, and I go, oh man, they're so good at that. I'll go do my podcast. But there aren't that many. And for that reason, it's so important to support the ones that are there. So I saw tonight, well, I didn't see, my wife told me about it. I try not to TikTok. My wife told me about a video that Lisa B 0923 posted, addressing some tragic events that have unfolded in Alberta over the last little while. There was a gentleman who was navigating physical disability, mental health disabilities, and he posted a letter where he talked about the crushing weight of all of those things was rendered unmanageable by the changes that the UCP government is making to AISH and ADAP. And, the breakdown made the decision. We were sent a copy of the letter. It's publicly available if you want to go read it. It's not hard to find. But here's the thing, and we addressed this in a bit of a Twitter thread. I want to take a sec to address it now. It's so complex, and in no way do I want to minimize the suffering that individual was navigating, and in no way do I want to minimize the effect that the UCP's, the current provincial government's approach to disability supports has had on him and on many others. And this is where it gets really difficult for me as someone with a platform to try to navigate, because the concern that I have, I'm just going to say it. Probably going to get myself into trouble. Oh, well, it must be a day that ends in Y. I get that there's a whole lot of anger. I get there's a whole lot of despair, and it exists for very, very good reasons. One of the things that my wife and I talked about when we were talking about how I was going to try to talk about this, if at all, was the disability town hall that the breakdown was invited to, and that we attended, and the frustration and the despair that was present in that room. But at the same time, there was resilience and there was persistence. And the fear that I have is, I take nothing away from the fact that that individual navigating their hardships. I don't have a script. I'm doing this on the fly, for the record. So if my words aren't perfect, I don't know what to tell you. That individual navigating their individual and unique hardships, it was too much for them. It was unnecessary. The too much part was unnecessary. The too much part that came from the UCP in the form of these changes to AISH, Danielle Smith's 3 new programs, bullshit, that was unnecessary. And it is failing. Not in the sense that they're not going to execute it, because God knows they will. It is the programs. Let's be clear. I want to back this up for a second. The programs that are being put in place and that have historically been in place have been failing the people that they are supposed to support for years. Period. End of sentence. When I was trying to figure out how I was going to talk about this tonight, one of the things that I tried to do was look at, okay, so, and I've made this argument before, but I wanted to use current numbers. I wanted to be accurate. What is the poverty line? And it's kind of an abstract thing. It's difficult to be entirely specific about. But the decision that I landed on was, there were some numbers that put it around 28,000 a year is the poverty line. 24,000 a year. I wanted more current numbers, because ask anybody who's like living in Alberta right now, and the cost of living has grown crushingly over the last year and a half. And so I wanted some current numbers. I wanted some numbers that were relevant, and I wanted some numbers that were coming directly from the government. And in order to do that, what I decided to take a look at was looking at the low-income housing levels. So if you want to access low-income housing in the province of Alberta, there are certain numbers that you have to make, and then the government goes, yeah, in this area, and they've got different numbers for all across the province. In this area, you are making less than what is required in order to live in the place that you are in. And so the numbers that I'm about to share, these are the lowest numbers. They go up. And this is what I'm using as the poverty line. If you want to get a bachelor suite, you're not getting a bedroom, you're getting a bachelor suite. The lowest income is $32,500. So if you're making less than $32,500 a year, that's central Alberta. That's where you can start to look at getting government assistance for housing. In Calgary, actually, we'll do Edmonton next. Edmonton is $46,000. Anything under $46,000 is considered low income or the poverty line, in that you require government assistance to live in a bachelor suite. Calgary, that number, this is 2026 numbers, by the way, that number is $57,500. Let's talk about what people on AISH get. The maximum amount that a person on AISH receives before, if they squirrel away $10 a month and do some smart investing, and I don't know what, I'm not an investor, the maximum amount that they can receive is $27,480. Again, in Calgary, anything under $57,500 is considered low income. AISH recipients are getting half of what the poverty line is in Calgary. The ADAP maximum that people can get is $29,280. Both of these numbers before you start to get clawbacks. So the clawbacks start small, but then they get really, really big. Both of these numbers are well below the poverty line in either major city, and they're well below the poverty line in central Alberta. Fundamentally, this province is failing at supporting disabled Albertans, period. Danielle Smith can talk as much as she wants about it's the most generous program in all of Canada. That's like saying we only punched this person in the face 5 times. Those guys punched him in the face 10 times. So, we're doing great. The supports that exist for disabled Albertans fail, and they are only being made worse under the policy changes by the UCP. And to hear Danielle Smith talk about what constitutes as counting as severely disabled enough is just offensive. IQ less than 70. You have to be completely physically immobilized. That's how she describes it. In multiple places. I had the clip ready. I decided not to upload it because it's just so gross to listen to. But that's what she says. There is no awareness for the invisible disabilities that way too many people have to navigate with inappropriate supports. And to not include those in the AISH universe and to force those people onto ADAP is to say, you know what it is? Under the old system, you just weren't trying hard enough. And that message is false. And the reason why I made the decision that the breakdown was not going to share the letter is because that is a message that people hear enough. They don't need to hear that message validated in any way, intentionally or unintentionally, through a letter left by somebody who had hit the point that they were no longer able to bear their own individual burdens. And I'm not putting any judgment on any decisions that person made. I reject wholeheartedly the argument that a person's worth is defined by their economic output or their ability to generate economic output. I have had the privilege and the experience of working with disabled individuals who have recognized that because of their limitations, whether they be due to physical limitations or mental health limitations or what have you, they still desperately want to contribute. They still desperately want to be a part of the things. And they do amazing volunteer work because it's something that they can do on their terms when they're able. That is invaluable. You can't put a dollar price on that, nor should you. It makes me profoundly sad that this gentleman was at a place where he was no longer able to see the intrinsic value of his life and every human life. But I'm not going to amplify that message because I don't believe that it's true. There's no question that the UCP and this provincial government and Danielle Smith with her bullshit rationalizations are doing very real harm. There's no question that they are failing the people that they are supposed to be lifting up and protecting. There's no question about any of that. But the thing that I come back to in all of this is I think of the trans kids that have been denied access to the healthcare. I think of the parents who are watching their kids try to navigate gender dysphoria, a diagnosable medical condition without evidence-based supports because Danny decided that they don't get access to them. I think about the frustration and the heartbreak that those parents have to endure watching their kids go through what is unnecessary suffering. And we have, as a society, who believe that what these things that the UCP are doing is wrong, said to those people, we are going to do everything in our power to make it right. Please hold on. Please ask your kids to hold on. I see no differences here. For members of the disabled community who are looking at this tragedy and trying to make sense of it, and I desperately hope not, but I know that it's happening, apply it to themselves in order to try to process it. Please do not. You are your own unique person. There are many people who see the wrong that this is, and there are many people who are going to do everything that they can to push back and to fight for change because it is offensive in the most odious way that the version of supporting people who have disabilities, who have obstacles, is to hold them down under the poverty line. I can't even wrap my head around that. And we need to do better. So that's what I've got for now on that. I just don't think people need to hear that because I don't think it's true. I don't think it's true. I think that is one version of reality for one group of people who are trying to push a policy agenda because they don't understand and they don't care. But I don't think it's true because I see lots of people saying this is wrong. And in order to recognize that what is happening is wrong, you have to be able to recognize that every single person has their own intrinsic value, and that is to be protected, it is to be nurtured, it is to be supported, it is not to be suppressed. And I just will not be a part of amplifying the message that you're only a good person, you're only a value if you can produce, because it's bullshit. And I still, $15,000 to put on an event, that's madness. It's absolutely madness. And I say that, this is the hardest pivot. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, everybody. I say that given that the Breakdown is currently trying to put on some events. And I want to say, I'm going to regret doing this. I got a message from somebody earlier this week who was unaware that we had Asian ADAP pricing for the live show in Edmonton. We absolutely do. I have booked a larger venue than we need. I've done that on purpose because I don't want anybody to not be able to come to the show who isn't able to financially afford it. So if you're in that boat, send me an email, info@thebreakdownab, and we will make something work, because that's just silly that people would not be able to come to the show. One of the reasons why I booked a larger event is so that as many people who wanted to come could come. And speaking of the event, here we go. We have to date announced 2 guests. This is so clumsy coming off of that. I apologize, everybody, but I have to do it because I am actually really excited about this show coming up in Edmonton. And there is such, like, here's the thing, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. The show in Edmonton that we did last year, the sense of community that was there was so real. And I loved it so much. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, yeah, we'll do this big thing again. And I am so excited with the guests that we have locked in. I'm announcing the 3rd one tonight. Let me tell you though, we got another 3 that we're going to be announcing, and it's so good. We have Dr. Patrick Lennox, who is a national security and intelligence expert. I just can't get over the pirates thing. I know everybody's been like, Nate, stop talking about the fucking pirates. I'm sorry. The guy got a medal for fighting pirates. That's amazing for so many reasons. And he is a national security and intelligence expert, and going into the referendum, that's a really big part of the conversation. We also have Dr. Jared Wesley, who's a political scientist. He's part of the Lead Not Leave organization. The work that he's done with Common Ground is absolutely amazing. And I am so excited to be able to announce our 3rd guest tonight. I cannot believe the guests that we're getting for this show. It's going to be so good. It's stupid. I absolutely love having conversations with this woman because she is so smart. She cuts right to the point of things. And she does it in a way that has compassion. And I am so excited to be able to announce, and before I do, I know I'm just building the dramatic tension. We have reached out to the UCP folks. We put a message up with the caucus tagged and everything, and we said, hey, if you guys want to send someone, we would love to have you come out and have this conversation, and it will be done in good faith. It will be done respectfully. I'm not here. I can do that. I have that gear. I've done it before. We to date have not received any responses from the UCP, but we have heard from the NDP, and I'm so excited to announce tonight that Jody Callahoo Stonehouse. I'm dead. Jody Callahoo Stonehouse is going to be coming out for a conversation on the referendum. And I am going to be asking her some very big questions about the First Nations piece. She has spoken to that incredibly well already, but I have a couple of angles that I'm looking to pursue. And I am just so, that's so awesome. I mean, there's 3 more I'm announcing over the coming weeks. And look at what we have already for this night. This is going to be such an unbelievably good conversation. And I am so grateful that I get to do this. It's so awesome. Tickets remain on sale. There are still plenty available because, like I said, I overbooked I underbooked. I don't know. I made sure that I got a really big place. I did not have to pay $15,000 for it. I don't get that. Tickets are $30. There is the discounted Asia app, but like I said, if it's a problem, just send me an email. For tickets, you can visit thebreakdownABlive.ca. It's going to be at the Orange Hub. It's going to be amazing. And that's my plug for that. We also, of course, do have all of our merch stuffs available, as we always do. If you want some cool, that landed badly. If you want some apparel to wear to the show, you can get it at www.thebreakdownabmerch.ca. We've got the shirts, we've got the hoodies, and we're going to be adding, I think, just in time for the show, hopefully, we're going to be adding a new addition to the lineup, because I think it's going to be all kinds of silly fun. So keep your eyes out for that. Probably going to announce it next week. But there's that. And then, as always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, we'd love nothing more than if you signed up to be one of our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where you can sign up for the amount that you choose and help us keep the lights on and do things. Get equipment. I have some new equipment that I want to get for the Edmonton show. You can sign up to do that at patreon.com/thebreakdownab. But if you are somebody who's not into the regular recurring commitment, you can also send e-transfers to info@thebreakdownab.ca. I will say our Patreon sponsors do get early access to all of our interview episodes. And I want to clarify, here's the thing. The universe happens sometimes. Last live show, I was talking about how excited I was to have an interview coming up with a guest. We're going to be talking about a bunch of things. Unfortunately, the birthing of babies apparently does not occur around the breakdown schedule. So inconsiderate, these little ones, I swear. So we're working on rescheduling that particular conversation. But when we do get it done, our Patreon supporters will have first look at it. So if you want early access to those interview episodes, that's where you can do it. You can also check us out on our Substack. That's where the big long article, thing that was written about the Western Standard stuff is there. All the receipts, all the articles, and it's got an extra special little deep dive into Mr. Fildebrand's history that he did not like. We had to make some updates, but it's all still there. So with the minor updates, Derek Fildebrand was never charged with anything criminal, to be clear. No, never convicted of anything criminal. He was charged with uttering threats. And while it was found that he did say that he protected his property with a gun, he was found not guilty of that criminal charge. There was a bunch of other charges that he was convicted of, but they were not criminal. So for the record, there's that. In the article, or initial version of the article, I accidentally wrote that it was a criminal charge, and it wasn't. So I said that he whatever. Anyways, took responsibility because that's what big kids do. I think that's it. I think that's everything. I want to say a big thank you to everybody in the chat tonight who showed up. I'm a little scared to read the chat tonight because I have a feeling there's probably going to be some folks who want to take me to the woodshed, but that's okay. I always welcome any feedback. Yeah, that's it. That's all. Thanks, everybody. We will be back. And this is the thing. I don't know how Thursday is going to go again. Last Thursday was a learning experience for me in a big way. It was unexpected. The last open mic that we did, I guess that was 2 weeks ago. We're doing it again this Thursday, 7:00. You can join us on the Twitter Spaces. I see that we have all of nobody there tonight, so I'm thinking Twitter's slowly starting to die for that. Or we'll just do the chat thing, and I will address the questions that are brought up in the chat. In the meantime, and in between time, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you everybody for listening. If you're watching on the YouTubes, the subscribing and the bell thing and share it with all of your friends and relatives, because we had a bunch of comments last week that like, oh my goodness, you don't have nearly enough views. And I don't know how to fix that other than by saying more people can watch it if they want to. And that's what I've got. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And as always, keep the conversation going.